times of our lives. As an artist collaboration, we've given shape and depth to some of the most complicated topics of our time, making them easily accessible for those who seek to understand. We've given voice and space to the stories that often go ignored. Please take a moment to consider being a patron, make a donation, or join Rockfin. Thank you. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to another edition of Pullquote.
Hi, guys. How are you today?
We hope you're doing well. Today we have a really great guest. We've had him on before, Hrvoje.
Hrvoje Moric from Geopolitics and Empire.
Yeah. And if you haven't watched his program, he's on all the channels, okay? And you can go to his website. We'll give you that later in the show notes, but also we'll talk about his website. We found him, I don't know how many years ago. We might have been
at least 2 years ago.
Yeah, and it may have even been before the whole COVID thing, because we were looking at different, content creators out there, and we always liked his program, and we always admired the fact that he brings people on from different perspectives, and that's what we try to do as well. And so we were really happy that he agreed to come on.
Yeah.
But to give you a background, Hrvoje Moric is the host. He's the most host.
The host with the most.
He's the host with the most. He's the host and producer of the Geopolitics and Empire Podcast, where he interviews experts in international affairs. I could go on radio with this kind of voiceover. I can read scripts.
You want me to read it?
No, I got it. Previously, he worked as a global perspectives teacher at Nazarbayev Intellectual Schools in Kazakhstan, and as an adjunct professor of international relations at Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico. So much for my Spanish. He obtained a Bachelor of Arts in History and Education from Northeastern Illinois University and a Master of International Relations from the Geneva School of Diplomacy in Switzerland. He served as a volunteer with the Peace Corps Mongolia and as a staff assistant with the mission of Czech Republic for the United Nations. So welcome, Hrvoje Moric. And there he is. Hello.
It's great to be Hello. It's great to be here back again.
Yeah,
Hi, nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you for coming back on the show. We've always enjoyed watching you, and we enjoyed our last show talking to you. So we always are happy to.
I like your name, the Croat.
The Croat.
That's what my name literally means, Croat. So
really,
right? I think you mentioned that before too.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Hrvoje or Moric?
Hrvoje, yeah.
Okay.
Hrvoje, yeah.
Hrvoje.
Okay, thank you.
So we are calling you Hrvoje. I'm so sorry. Hrvoje.
So it's the J is almost like another, like in Spanish or in Swedish or there's other. Okay, so Croatian language, is it similar to any other languages out there?
Similar to Russian.
Okay.
Now I'm going to get in trouble. It's a Slavic language, so like you count to 10 in Croatian, it's the same as Russian, for example.
Oh, really? So it's an Indo-European Slavic branch. Okay. All right, cool.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
So where are you living these days?
I'm still here in Mexico.
All right. That's cool.
Good.
That's good.
Enjoying the weather.
Not moving anywhere, given all the craziness that's going on. I don't think now's a good time to move back to Europe either. So, given World War III scenario. So.
I know. We really appreciate the various voices that you tend to host on your program. One individual that we were watching recently, it was Joaquin Flores, and I was also checking in a little bit with Stephen Shu, the guy you spoke with about 2 weeks ago or so. And I want to say that the general theme that's going on with your guests is what you just said, World War III. So Are we on the precipice of an event like this? Would you say?
It's really like my view is that there will always be a next war, right?
Right. Okay.
There will always be a next war. Like, I think you would be delusional to think that there won't be, right?
Mhm.
Some kind of big war. Like, the extent of it is debatable, whether it's like,
Mhm.
total global war, but I think that's a given. And then the question becomes, well, obviously no one knows what it's going to look like, because when the wars begin, like each world war, uh, when the war begins, new technologies start to develop, and
Right.
so you
Right.
can't know exactly what it's going to, like, when World War II started, they didn't have the A bomb, right,
Right.
Right.
at the
Right.
beginning,
Yeah.
and in the
Yeah.
end they did. So who knows what we'll get
Yeah.
with the next war, but
And World War One, I mean, aviation was like a big player in that, right? As well as, chemical warfare.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
So I think it's very a possible. A number of my guests, and I've mentioned this, have said that from the Russian perspective, it seems like they don't want to escalate. They just want to do what they need to do in Ukraine.
Hmm.
And it's all up to the crazies in Washington and Brussels and London, who, if they can escalate. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the Russians just want to do their job. They don't want to expand the situation beyond the borders of Ukraine. But it's up to Washington. Washington has an interest to keep the fire going. And something interesting I just heard this morning. So brand new news for you. I was talking to someone from Kazakhstan, because I used to live there. And
Mhm.
I don't know if this is verified. They told me that someone from Russia told them that in Russia, I don't know if this is like gossip. I'm asking them for more verification. Supposedly, that in Russia now you will get fined for wearing a face mask, and that Putin has shut down like the COVID hospitals. So this would kind of, maybe you've been seeing like this talk of, is Russia with the World Economic Forum, or are they truly fighting against the new world order?
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
the question I'm always asking myself. I don't know. I don't want to be one of those say, yeah, Putin is. I mean, this is what my last guest talked about, Joaquin Flores, that just
Hmm.
because you shake hands with someone, I shook hands with Gorbachev. Gorbachev is a globalist. Am I a globalist? No, it's just like, it's really
You're,
interesting that there's some evidence demonstrating that, maybe we are getting these X factors, right? Like Putin or some Russian faction punching against the globalists.
hmm,
Or maybe not. But it's just
right.
interesting information that, if that's true, that Russia would be pulling back on some of this Great Reset
Yeah.
stuff.
Well,
But yeah, so
it's interesting that you bring that up, because this morning I was listening to an interview between Dr. Palevsky, who we had on our show earlier this year, and Dr. Lee Merritt, and they were talking together, and they were talking about this very same thing.
Right.
And they were and she's a Navy surgeon, right?
Right.
So she has a lot of military
Military.
intel, and she's probably somebody you want to talk to.
Right.
She's very interesting.
If you haven't already.
If you haven't already, but
which I don't think you have.
but she
Right.
was talking about the very thing that you're saying. This, like, that people were trying to link Putin to being part of the World Economic Forum,
Right.
and he was being accused of being an anti.
Well, they think he's a young global leader. We're
Right,
not.
that's what people are. Did they think him that?
Well,
that
I
he's
don't
that?
think they.
No,
think
I
that.
don't.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. The collective they out
Right. Oh,
there
I see.
tend to call him a young global leader, whereas we actually went to the
Young Global Leader website.
and looked at the archives, and there are a lot of people in there,
Yeah.
but we couldn't find. No matter how hard we tried, we couldn't find Vladimir Putin.
I did the same, and I couldn't find him. And you also couldn't match. He was older, I think, in the 90s, because the Young Global Leaders thing started in the early 90s, I think. And
Right.
by that
Right.
age, Putin was too old.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's
Right.
that's what my past guest was saying, because we know these people are lying liars, right? Klaus Schwab and all of these people. They
Right.
lie about everything. So you would assume that they easily can exaggerate, right? Oh, we've got everyone covered. We got all of the bases covered. Just it is a psychological operation. That's what you do in any war, anyways. Like you go back to previous world wars. Like they send pamphlets. They make it seem that they're stronger than they really are. I mean, here's a practical example. My uncle, who's still alive, he fought in the war in Yugoslavia. I guess he killed a bunch of Serbs when the Serbs entered the northeastern part of Croatia, where he was living. and he told me that there were like 1,000 or more Serbs invading. It was Vukovar, the city, and there were only dozens of Croats defending it. But they spread out, and they use tactics like light and gunfire, and spread out. And they made it seem like they projected that there were more of them. So that because if the 1,000 Serbs knew that there were only like 50 or 100 Croats, they would just go right in.
Right.
It's a military strategy where you make it seem like, oh, there's 1,000 of you to stave off the opposite side. You see, that could be the same thing that the World Economic Forum people.
Well, yeah, and that's something that we've been kind of hinting at or touching on ourselves, and the illusion. Yeah, in fact, we kind of came up with a term the other day, the illusionary war.
Or illusion warfare.
Especially like in regard to Ukraine. We saw a video recently. This English guy he flew into Poland. He said unvaxxed, took a train into Ukraine without any trouble.
No trouble.
And the first thing he sees in the train station when he gets to Ukraine, I forget which city he landed in, he's like, everybody was forced to be in the ticketing, like foyer, so that it looked crowded, and all the reporters were there because it made it look like there was a
mass exodus of refugees.
And as he went around, he started seeing actual sets. And we can send you the link, or we can whatever, we'll put it in the show notes. But and that's the other thing too, is like, as you guys were saying, when you're talking to Joaquin, as if we don't know what to trust, right? So this guy could be some disinformation floated over to us, to believe, Right. So we're not putting 100% of our trust in that, but at the same time, it kind of like links up with a lot of things we've been talking about.
We look at everything with a healthy dose of skepticism, first and foremost. You're
getting some feedback.
Got feedback?
Got workers working on the roof. I don't know. These guys. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no
I don't know if you can hear it.
I heard a little bit.
We heard a little bit of something.
Okay. Yeah.
But we look at everything through the lens of a healthy dose of skepticism, and I've just started calling everything illusionary warfare. The illusion of a pathogen, the illusion of truckers going on strike, the illusion of some kind of major upset in Ukraine by the hands of the evil Russian Empire. It's very and it's hard because and I reflect what Joaquin said to you, which is that most people are led around by their emotions, or Stephen Shu also mentioned this as well. Although much of what he said was frightening and terrible, and I personally think he's very arrogant.
Really?
But the fact is that he was being very practical and unemotional about his analysis of these geopolitical events that are taking place. And he was making some really practical commentary. Like, for instance, he was saying that I guess Russia has the capability to blow up space stations or something. And he's like, do people not understand like the ramifications of that? So you blow up one space station in space, and then the pieces of that space station could hit another space station, which would then affect other satellites or satellites, not space stations. Did I call them space stations? I meant satellites. You know what I mean? That's So I thought these are really practical, logical analyses of things that are often missing with our friends, our very emotional friends on social media. So I really appreciate that you have a platform that brings these practical people on to talk about, especially like tactics, like tactical warfare and things like that. So
yeah, I think his approach, like, you have to look at these things without emotion, and I get people. I can't keep repeating myself. Like, I send out my email newsletter each week, like with a list of headlines. So each on my free email list, I send out an email with every new podcast that gets published, and then once a week with a long list of key headlines, which I think are the most important, which I pull from my social media, Twitter and Telegram. And I try to be fair. I try to post decent stuff from alternative viewpoints, but also from some mainstream points that make sense. Like, so I posted, like, if you read some of the Russian guys, like the Saker, I don't know if you know him, the Saker, Andrei Martyanov, and others, who give you a perspective that tells you the Russians are winning in Ukraine, which I think that the Russians are succeeding.
Right.
Maybe not as good as they would hope, but can you hear the hammering or no?
A little bit, but it's okay.
It's okay.
It's not distracting.
And then there's others that from the West that say Russia's failing, right? And so I shared an article from an Australian major general who I'm hoping to get on my podcast. He initially said yes, and he was saying, "Oh, the Russian operation is failing." And then one listener replied to my email saying, "Are you serious? Like, including this information?" And I'm like, "How many times do I have to tell you?" This is kind of what you're talking about, like with Steve. It's like retweet does not equal endorsement. Right?
Exactly.
Like it's like in geopolitics, you have to look at everything. You got to listen to what the Australian general is saying. You can't just listen to the Russians. That'd be stupid. Like, you have to listen to what the Western experts are saying. What know what I'm saying? And so people just don't get it. You got to lay all the info out, no matter how these guys say Russians are failing. The Russians are saying they're winning. Well,
right.
Well, so we heard it. We were listening to another podcast recently, one you were playing for me, and the guest was saying that Putin started the war because his political his political his
ideology.
No, his strength as as being a politician was going away, right? So that he had to start a war in order to pump himself up again in popularity or whatever.
This was from a liberal perspective. So who, what, why? They're very NPR like. So it's difficult to parse through my opinion of them to get to what it is they're trying to say. But I lay aside my own issues with their liberal take on things, and they brought up the fact that Putin doesn't have any heirs, and this, taking this, what I often call a 100,000 foot bird's eye, eagle eye view of the entire
landscape
and the entire marketing campaign, which is something that we've been calling all of this, is that a lot of the people in these political positions and leadership, they don't have an heir, they don't have progeny, they don't have people that they can pass on their knowledge and it's not just about money, but pass on their power to, and that they've actually developed a deep disdain for the future generations. And so I'm often thinking, like, what happens after Putin? Like, what happens when he's gone? Because he's such a powerful, effective leader, even if it means that he's affected an image that he's a powerful, effective leader. So what happens after that? I am of the belief that a vacuum will be created, and within that we will get more austerity for Russia and more neoliberalism, and I'm just it's a little concerning. And so this liberal person who everybody would ignore because of his liberal slant was actually making some really good points. And I guess that's where you come in, because you actually do journalism. You do what's often missing in the mainstream press and that whole debacle. I mean, they're not being journalists, but you are. And so we appreciate that. I just wanted to make that point.
People often call me journalists. Although I've never technically said so. I've said I'm a podcaster.
Exactly.
I just do a podcast. It's fine.
You're an interviewer.
If people want to call me journalist, hey, you said it, not me. I say that because when the establishment tries to go after you, right? Like, you get these mainstream journalists.
Right.
And they're like, oh, this guy's, crazy conspiracy theorist journalist or whatever anti-crazy journalist. I'm like, hey, I'm not a journalist. I'm just a podcaster. So that's when they try to get you. And
okay,
right.
Just
well,
I think I think that what she's saying is you do journalism even though you may not be a journalist.
Right.
We always say we're not journalists, we're artists.
Heck no. we're critical commentaries, artists, creatives, But so you're not a journalist, but you do journalism in that you interview people who are journalists or who are experts in their field. From both sides.
I'm just trying to cover my legal basis. Use
Okay.
the loophole. I'm just curious. What do you guys think? So I get people now wanting to come on my podcast, and I was contacted by an agent of some former BBC journalist. It says expert.
Wow.
But he's like a journalist. He's not some expert. But now I guess after doing, he's been podcasting and doing interviews like I have, and so now maybe he's earned the label of expert. But I checked the guy out and I look at his feed, and he recently, just like yesterday, posted himself with a mask in a supermarket.
No. Oh, God.
And he's like, I'm the only one with the mask in the supermarket. Not even the workers are wearing the mask. It's like, what's wrong with you people? There's like, COVID's not over. There's a new variant coming. And then I look at his other stuff. He's like, yeah, Trump is a fascist. And like, I don't have to be a Trump fan. But we didn't see fascism under Trump. We're now seeing fascism under Biden. I think everyone can agree. Yeah. So it's
everyone can agree on that.
So he's like full on the only guy wearing the mask, getting angry about it, and then Trump is a fascist, and then all the climate stuff. And I'm like, so I asked some of my listeners in the Telegram, like, should I have this guy on? And everyone's like, no, because I try to be fair, but it's like I don't know what we talk about. We're diametrically opposed on all points, and like I say, like the time is short now. Like things are getting so bad that I don't really have time anymore, like to play games with,
Yes.
Like,
Right,
what do you guys think? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that he's being sent to you to compromise your show.
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
Yeah, someone also mentioned that. I wonder how though, like just to like poop on my show, like make it like I don't know, like
so many people have been misquoted and misrepresented. These mainstream press people get on these podcasts and then they take a portion of the podcast and replay it on their platform and have completely
messed with the context
and made this poor podcaster who's actually on the right side of history look like a crazy lunatic. So I would not recommend it.
No,
yeah, although I give the benefit of the doubt because my approach is where I let the guests speak. So it's not like I would be saying, "Oh no, you're crazy, you're wrong." I would just let them speak, so they wouldn't really have much for.
Well, that's true, and that I have noticed that about your show. I mean, you do. Yeah, you tend to record your shows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose you could record it and then decide not to release it.
Yeah, but I've almost never done that, and it's kind of like for the guests, it's just not polite if you
it's not
time and not release it. So,
but if you find out that he's not being polite either and like trying to use you for something just through his content, I mean, that's something that you could weigh. But on the other hand, it might just be better just to say thanks, no thanks.
Yeah, thanks, no thanks. What did you had a specific question for Hrvoje, right? About
I just was writing some notes. Yeah, so we were talking beforehand.
You would be an expert on that.
Yeah, and we wanted to get your take on things in the context of color revolutions, especially regarding Ukraine. We were talking earlier about how we felt about the truck drivers, but
because you wrote your thesis on that,
right? Exactly. So
we pay attention.
Yes.
So yeah.
So well, I think that there's I don't think people understand a lot of like what is going on. We were actually talking to somebody who was reporting on the area of Ukraine, the eastern area of Ukraine. I always forget the name of it.
The Donbass region.
The Donbass region.
Yeah.
And she went there and actually like reported from there, and but she didn't have any idea about, like, she didn't understand or she didn't know about the historical context of the color revolution. What was that? The Orange Revolution in in Ukraine, or was that
That
the
was
Velvet Revolution?
2004 was
Four, right? Yeah,
the Orange
the
Revolution.
Orange
So there
Revolution.
were
Yeah,
like two. You had 2004 and 2014. So yeah.
Right.
yeah. Well, let's talk about
Because
that.
everyone talks about the one in 2014, but let's go back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I mentioned it in my thesis, but I like it's been a long time, so I don't know. I don't remember the details, but like if we're talking about Ukraine, I mean, the color revolution that's long since that phase is long since passed, right? Like you had 2004, and then again in 2014, and you know the since then you've had the pro-Western regime completely in Ukraine, and finally what we're seeing now is the military conflict where Russia, like they've gone to that, they've come to that red line, the Western, you know, the Washington, who basically controls Ukraine, and so Russia was forced to respond. So it's like the war began like in 2004, and so you know they want to put Ukraine into NATO, make them an EU member, and it's not just, you know, yes, there's the NATO red line of the putting the nuclear. Once you become a member of NATO, then you put nuclear weapons and, you know, NATO military bases in Ukraine that can then target all of Russia's military bases and gives them a de facto first strike to the U.S. so Russia can't defend itself. So there's that military aspect, but also the sociocultural, spiritual, moral aspect of the whole like I'm a Christian, so it's like all for me I say is like the whole satanic thing. It's like a complete inversion of humanity, like of the full on abortions, transgender, you know, man is woman, woman is man, all of the inversion of all the cultural values that in most countries most people do not subscribe to. Like 99%, literally, go to Kazakhstan, go to Russia, go to Mongolia, 95% of people will say, this is crazy, we don't want this. It's only in the West. Like, you got to leave the West, you got to go to third world countries, and you will see people have conservative traditional values. A man is a man, a woman is a woman. Whatever you do, if you do something like in private, that's your thing, but for society, these are the rules. And so that's also a huge red line, which I think also Russia is pushing back on, and China as well. And this was my Kazakh friend. I spoke to them this morning. Also, we're discussing this as well. So
interesting. Well, you know, one of the things that we've noticed is that on the transgender thing, you know, even though they're pushing this, and Julie and I were talking about this in regard to the American swimmer who just won the NCAA. You know, he won the NCAA. You know, it's like they have been only, you know, transitioning for the past year or so. So how valid is that claim that they can swim in the women's, you know? But what we're noticing, and Julie found this as well, is that it looks like it's also a blowback, or they're setting something up so that it blows back on the transgender community, the legitimate transgender community that exists out there,
which you may not agree with.
Yeah, but you know, in our sector of the world, not Pittsburgh, but just
in general, our
worldview. You know, it's like we have trans friends. We don't have a problem with it ourselves. But what we're seeing is they are being used to push an agenda, and then at the same time being framed to get, you know, this sort of backlash that's taking place. And Pilevsky and Merritt were talking about this as well, in regard to, you know, they're taking away the roles of men, they're taking away the roles of women, and they're neutralizing, not neutralizing, but just what was the
neutering.
Word? Neutering. Well, that's something he was saying, is like he was, you know, they're taking away the power that people have in their own gender roles, or in who they see in their worldviews as well, through all this fuckery, the stuff that you were just talking about.
Yeah,
because if you don't have if you don't have a concrete identity, like, then people have said this, whether it's a nation, individual level, or a nation, if you remove your identity, then you can't defend yourself, because and then they want to impose this new globalist mishmash Babylonian identity upon you, and that's how they can then control you. And then other people talk about, part of the program is the transhumanism, which is really anti-human, and transhumanism wants to remove all vestiges of humanity and then impose this inversion. And if we're going to the fourth industrial revolution with robotics and everything, some people have talked about if robots are going to replace workers, you need laws, right, for robots. I think Catherine Austin Fitz and others have mentioned this. And so one way they can do away with that is removing the gender roles, because robots don't have genders. And so you see what I'm saying? This could be one avenue of the trans thing. And I agree with you also. They could be using the trans movement as, I guess you're talking about like some kind of false flag. I'm not too well versed. I don't doubt that. I don't know exactly where they would be going with that, though.
Yeah.
Well, it could potentially create violence against the community. I tend to have a little more faith in humanity. I don't think we're going to get a bunch of conservative Christians going and, hurting or killing or murdering or maiming transgender people.
I mean, they shouldn't. I mean, in the Bible, it talks about peace and laying down your life for your enemy. So if any Christian goes and carries out violence, they're not a Christian. They're probably a government agent. No, because it literally says you preach the gospel. Someone can hear it and say, "No, I don't want it." Okay, bye. Next. That's it.
Right.
But we're not supposed to go. As you say, I have no problem having friends that are. I've got dear friends that are Marxists that say, "I'm going to kill you," but hey, let's have a beer, or or a friend that's gay or something. But I don't agree with. I mean, everyone has something you may not agree with, or maybe I have a friend who's got a girlfriend. That's called fornication. I don't agree with that. If they're not married, right? So it's like it's kind of that same thing. But it's like I'm not gonna not be friends with them. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about identity, and we've been seeing the watering down of identity through like identity politics and what's that other thing that we talk about? The term is not coming to me. But what I've been noticing is it's a new way of creating conformity. Yes. So you just focus on, I am this and I'm that and I'm something else.
And you identify
and I identify something. As this and the whole pronoun thing, which I just don't subscribe to personally for myself. I refuse to put my pronouns in like LinkedIn and that kind of thing. Because I just feel like it's a means of, again, conformity, a form of conformity to, and control. Exactly. Thank you.
But who's coming up with it? It's not like any of us decided someday, I'm going to call myself he, she, they. Like, it's not your own agency. Like for that alone should tell me stop. I'm not playing this game, because who's putting this, as you said, this new game board out there? It's the globalists, it's the corporations. So they're the ones telling me that I should identify as these options, that they give me these options.
To create that safe
space. I think anyone should realize, like, don't even play this game. If I want to be who I want to be genuinely, authentically, but like here come the corporations and globalists say, oh, here's your like 100 list of genders or whatever, BLM, or here's my nice little brand of BLM sponsored by Soros or Antifa or like.
I know.
I agree, and I the whole labeling. I think there's a lot of people out there now that are saying I'm getting to the point where I'm not identifying as left or as right.
Yeah.
I interviewed. And I will even say the same for the fake conservative stuff, like the Trump MAGA. I don't even want anything to do with the Trump MAGA stuff, like all this fake Republican, fake conservatism. And my last guest, one of my recent guests, Professor Emeritus David Hendrickson, said on his Twitter, and I asked him about it in an interview. He says, "I hate the right, I hate the left," and so it's like
I hate everybody.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, it's getting
funny.
It's getting to the point where it's like I'm really disavowing myself from any of the the so-called tendencies within the anarchist movement. It's like, what? I'm an anarchist. That's it.
Right.
Done. I'm not I'm not going to the tendency thing anymore. And it's like, I can't, because it doesn't, first of all, none of them apply to like who I actually feel I am, legitimately and authentically. they, it's like, well, I'm a little bit of this and I'm a little bit of, fuck it,
Yeah.
I'm just not going there,
Mhm.
and I feel the same way. It's just like, and yet I'm who I am, and yet I'm able to relate to, people who, who are conservative Christians or however you identify,
Mhm.
and we talk to liberals, and we talk to people of all, stripes and backgrounds, and we're finding common ground through our worldview, I think, is what it comes down to.
I think part of this game is to divide us. They
Yeah.
want us to think in this framework and paradigm where, oh, I'm left or I'm right or I'm trans or I'm this, I'm in this category. Oh, I'm not supposed to talk to that person. I'm supposed to hate this person. And I forget who it was that mentioned also, this is a way to control us. It's just divide and conquer, basically. And we shouldn't
Right.
even play that game. But also someone had mentioned that this was the way, it had something to do with like the algorithms and the Great
Mhm.
Reset, how this is also one way of them being able to label us like in real life. Like it's
Yes.
connected somehow to the digital and physical space. So we
Yes.
can all be categorized and then sifted, once we're all labeled with these
Mhm.
labels that they give us, then we can then be controlled like
Then they
in
can decide if we're worth employing, if we're worth getting paid, if we're worth owning anything. Like this is where you get down to that,
social credit system, basically.
mhm,
Yeah.
based on credit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and not even social credit, but we're
Just-
starting to explore yet another script for debt and credit. And
right.
as it turns out, I mean, it's hard to get work if you have a bad credit score, like a bad,
Right.
credit card or credit score. And, it doesn't matter necessarily how much money you have out on a credit card or whatever. It's just the fact that you have a credit and it's ongoing. Right. So
Right.
you could be the most solid citizen financially in the world, but if you don't have a credit card with some money on it that you owe, your credit score either doesn't exist or it's crap.
Right.
And that could determine whether you get a job or not.
Right.
This is crazy. I think for now, this is very US specific, I think,
Yes.
because for example, so what you're saying, so I'm the kind of person, I don't have debt. I don't like debt. So I don't have any debt. So, and I don't have an account in the US. I've been away for forever. But so this
Mhm.
would mean then in the US, if I don't have a credit card and I have no debt, then I have a bad score.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you will not be able to get a loan for a home. You may not be able to get a car loan. And it doesn't matter how much debt you have. If you have $10 on a credit card and you've been paying, you've been buying things and paying them down and just leaving a little bit of money on that, it's fine. You'll have a good credit score.
Right.
But if you don't have a credit card, if you don't have, whatever, or
like many people don't. We
Yeah.
have many friends who just deal
pay
in cash. They pay with cash with everything.
So it can actually hurt you in, so this is I believe what's actually going to be
That's
like a social credit score.
Yeah, that's very US centric. So in other countries,
Yes.
I don't think it's gotten there yet. It may be spreading, but for example, here in Mexico, if you buy a car or a home on credit or something, like getting the credit will depend on your savings, if you have a job, your savings, or simply if there's someone who will sign, like they will be responsible. They have property or collateral, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yes.
so that if you can't pay the debt, then this
Right. So
person,
All that
That's
still
a-
applies here.
all of that applies,
Right.
and that's sort of like an old school way of
Right.
doing it, and
Yeah.
that's been the way it's been forever.
But there's this new layer.
I
now.
think that our concern, over here, given what we look into, and our corporate sort of backgrounds, and what he's experienced as as consulting recently, is that the job market is going to be very tough for the future generations, especially in the United States, where everything is going to be done through the tech sector, and a lot of these companies, these major corporations, they want you to follow that credit protocol in order to be a qualifiable applicant.
Mhm.
And to be considered for the job. So not only will it be difficult to get a car or get a home, but it'll be difficult to even make money, to get a job. You have to have some kind of revolving credit that just keeps going and going.
Here's just an example.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
nuts. And but here, this is maybe, I don't know how close on topic it is, but just this whole idea of the control, where it was.
control.
I mean, we were just. I got a new job. So I'm starting next week. So TNT radio. Hopefully nothing goes wrong, and I start on Monday online radio. But so we might need
That's out of the bag.
yeah. So we might need to start, and we might need to hire just some help, temporary, around the house, right? Like to clean the house,
Right,
or someone.
right.
And yeah, there you go. Hopefully, if I don't screw up, you'll see my face. You'll see my face there. And so.
That's great.
No, but they passed a law in Mexico, I guess, this week. So typically, you can just hire someone. Maybe there's a company that has maids or something, or you can just hire someone and pay them directly, whatever. Like it's Mexico, and now the government just passed a law saying that housekeepers, like the employers of the housekeepers, but I guess if the housekeeper is self-employed, how's that going to work? That they must have all the Social Security benefits. And then the article was saying, like, according to the UN. So it's almost like the UN, like the Mexican government is following the UN is forcing the Mexican government to make these laws. So it's like now, like, so if the housekeeper is self-employed, like, do I have to then pay for their Social Security? Like, I don't know how this works. It's just insane.
Right.
Like,
Wow.
this easy, informal type of economy that we used to have since the beginning of time. Like someone just to do some job in your house, and now you got to go through all this crazy bureaucratic government that knows everything about everything, and you can't like work without the government knowing, and then maybe if the government approves of that kind of work, you know what I'm saying? So
and we've been talking about how self-employment is being targeted and is being targeted to go away, and so they're doing it through things like this, right? Through bureaucracy or fucked up laws that take away your ability to really have any lateral movement of any kind.
But I do have to say, like, I understand where you're coming from. When we first moved to Pittsburgh, we noticed that the economy here it's almost like living in a developed country, underdeveloped country, in the process of being developed, rubbled out roads, broken up sidewalks, boarded up buildings. Okay. It's similar to like the kind of pictures and scenes you might see from small little areas that have been bombed out. So when we first moved here, I was talking to somebody, and we moved here in August. And so by the following November or something, we had got the first snowfall. And I said, how do you guys, I don't see any snow plows. I don't see the city like doing anything to move the snow. And she's like, oh, we just take care of it ourselves. We just pay people under the table. And so I noticed that there's a lot of that goes on in Pittsburgh. People just will literally come knock on our door and say, do you need us to do anything? It's, $100 cash, it's completely off the books. Like, so despite the fact that what you say about how you can't even get someone to come in and, either be a nanny or take care of your house and pay them under the table, despite the fact that may be the case, the human ingenuity always seems to find a way, especially when you're living in areas that have been sort of forgotten and neglected by the state,
Well, what happens when the central bank digital currency gets here?
Well,
there's no wiggle room.
There's no wiggle room. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, we're gonna have to go into trade or that similar to that I noticed the commercial on your show.
Nomos app. Yeah. It's Someone I know the developer, cool guy, and people write stupid comments like, "Oh, it's some globalist traps." Like, no, I know the guy, and he's very anti-globalist. He's very he very much like wants to live like the eco lifestyle, like like close to the earth type of thing. And he does some tech stuff, and he actually spoke to I don't know if the guy's still alive, but he's the kind of person that goes to these original people, like he reads and all this stuff, and he met the guy who came up with the idea of Time Bank.
Okay.
And like he spoke to him for hours. He does this kind of thing, and then he created this app based on the original Time Bank dude's idea to be able to facilitate And then someone comments like, well, if there's a cyber pandemic, then we can't use the app. Well, yeah, if the internet goes down, but people have been talking about, like James Corbett and many others, like if the internet goes down, we should be creating I forget what it's called. Like there's a local internet we can create through a peer-to-peer, like, I don't know, Bluetooth or other things where we can create local internets. So even if they did take down the internet, we could still connect all of our devices and be able, in a small community, be able to still use an app or whatever. So.
Yeah. So before I met JP, I was doing, a lot of pirating on the internet and downloading all of my music that I love, music and videos, because I wasn't going to pay for any of it.
You were on Pirate Bay, Julie?
I was on Pirate Bay.
Oh my God.
And I was constantly doing that peer-to-peer stuff. And
is it still
great.
like functioning, Pirate Bay? Like, do people still torrent stuff?
I don't know if people are still torrenting on that.
But there's torrent is still around. I mean, so.
But I think that, Corbett is onto something in that sense. There will be another way. And that kind of goes back to what I said before. We will find a way. And also I want to insert really quickly. I think the three of us can all agree that we will always fail a purity test. Like I tell people this all the time, especially people that I meet, through the platform, through our book of hours or just, promoting my stuff. And they're like, well, what about this? And what about that? You use a debit card or a credit card. And I always say, I will fail your purity test. I'm sorry to say, like, there are some purists out there that just like, well, it's like they make their own clones. They only use cash. It's like, well, God.
But at the same time, I mean, and that, no offense to some of our friends who do these things. They're not the ones that are criticizing us, but we've caught some flack from people online about this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, where were you when I was just, all I was doing was riding my, you weren't giving me any credit. Actually, this was happening when I was just riding my bike or taking the bus.
Right.
Not working from home and working at other places or whatever. It's like, you don't give me credit for doing these other things that you're not doing, but you'll take away from me because I'm doing some things that you don't think are right.
Right.
I mean,
so we haven't had a car for 25 years. You know what I mean? It's like,
14.
Okay, 14. Longer for me.
Yeah.
Like since the 90s.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Technically, I don't have a car. It's been 4 or 5 years. I mean, since I left for Kazakhstan. So I'm just using someone else's car for now.
Yeah. Well, we were using Zipcar and stuff like that, and that has its own issues as well. But
I think that we're going to have to accept the world we live in. And that world may include some kind of currency that operates outside of the central bank system. And if that currency is attached to a program or a philosophy that you don't agree with, you might have
to starve to death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you might not have a life.
And
like,
I
don't.
The time banking thing too, I think is another way of, like you could do it organically as long as you have that ledger that you agree to, or
you can make just personal agreements, like
exactly.
I just had like the thought, like if worst comes to worst, I'm here in Mexico, so maybe some dude who sells maybe he'll sell me a chicken or something or some eggs, and then maybe he's got some kids, I'll exchange English. What would be the most value here in Mexico that I can give? I'm not a physical laborer. Right. Unfortunately, I wish I need to start learning that, but I could easily do an English lesson. So if he'll accept teaching his kids for English, maybe he'll give me a little bit of, a few potatoes to feed my family. So there you go. So.
Right.
Yeah. So it's, and that's, that's beyond bartering, that's another sort of level, I think, of exchange. But
that's the kind of, that's the kind of lifestyle that people in neighborhoods of poverty, that's how they have operated for years. They take care of each other. They have somebody who is maybe too sick to cook for themselves, so they'll bring them the food, while that person who's sick might have a son who could fix your roof, that kind of thing. And you just do these,
you create these networks.
networks. And I think that was out of necessity in impoverished areas. But
It's really fun though. Like that happened to me more than 10 years ago when I was in Geneva. I didn't have money. My parents were, just barely paying all of the fees. I mean,
Wow.
Switzerland is super expensive. We had
Oh,
a
yeah.
partial scholarship, and so
Wow.
we just got the minimum buy, and barely having for food. And one of the Americans who worked at the university, he was like the manager. He had an apartment. I think it was in France, just 30 minutes. It's just a 30-minute ride from Switzerland to France.
Right.
And he needed to paint it, to sell it or whatever. I don't know. And of course, maybe he didn't have the money or he didn't want to pay someone to paint. And I'm like, oh, my father was a painter. I've painted with him. I know how to paint houses. And so it's like, I can't pay you, but I have a guitar and I play, basic guitar, and I didn't have a guitar. So he's like, if you paint for the weekend, I'll give you an acoustic guitar. And I'm like,
wow.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm here. I could use a guitar while I'm here in Geneva. And so I did the two days of painting, whatever. And then, he pays me in this guitar. So I have my guitar for fun in the free time. And then I'm like, I know the basics. Like, I'm not an expert in guitar, but like if someone wants to learn chords and just the basics, I'm like, I saw there was a forum where people were offering lessons, language lessons and stuff. So I said, basic guitar lessons. And the running fee in Switzerland is like 50 francs. It's like $50 an hour. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like for any kind of lesson, and here in Mexico, it's like $5 an hour or 10, I don't know, $50 an hour. So I put it out there, and I didn't have many, but I got a couple $100. There were people who signed up, and it's like, wow. So I just painted, I got a guitar in exchange, and then I used that guitar to make some money. It was like that feeling though. It's like, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is what I'm talking about, is that ingenuity, being able to think a little bit outside the box, pardon the expression.
Yeah. It's my least favorite expression.
I know. Kind of like eating your own dog food.
Right. Yeah.
Have you ever heard that expression, Hrvoje?
Eating your own
we eat our own dog food.
It's a corporate thing.
Yeah.
What you basically just described as someone who eats their own dog food.
I mean, we may have to, because we won't be able to afford meat, or Bill Gates will get rid of it. We may have to actually eat dog food.
I know, right?
That's funny.
He's taking away the farmlands too, so who knows?
Wow. So you probably have some good guests coming up in the future. I don't know if you want to talk about that, or if it's a secret. If you want to.
Now that I got this TNT gig, that's 15 freaking guests a week, which hopefully you guys will join me this week on TNT Radio.
I would love to.
I'll send you my schedule.
Yeah, and in terms of G&E, I just decided to take a slight break, because over the past few weeks I just kicked it into high gear, and like one of the weeks I had like 5 guests
right
in a week, and it's just like I'm overheating here, and I need to take a break. So
yeah, we know about that.
I recorded an interview. We'll go out this week with Anton Chaikin, who's close with Matthew Ehret, the Canadian.
Okay,
He's sort of like his kind of mentor. And then this is interesting. Very old lady. She's got a blog called Our Finite World, Gail Thalberg, and she does I guess she's got a huge readership, but she does a lot of stuff. She just confirmed today, this week we'll be chatting, but she talks about like energy, really interesting stuff. And she talks about kind of like a Mad Max scenario that we're going, kind of like James Kunstler, and maybe a little bit like Steve St. Angelo, the SRS Rocker Report guy. So, I've got a couple of guests, but now I'm just taking a breather before I start out again, and possibly talking to an Australian Major General.
That would be good.
His view on Russia. So I try to balance between. I think I have like a funky, eclectic cast of guests.
Good. Yeah.
Well, that's what we like about your show.
That's what we like about you and your
weird.
show.
Just go out and say it's weird. We like your show because it's weird.
And just to switch gears a little bit, I'm super curious. I know people who have fled either the UK or the United States or Canada and moved to Mexico during this whole great reset, COVID crazy experience. Apocalypse, exactly. And they rushed to Mexico, and I'm getting I'm getting
Mixed reviews.
Mixed reviews. Some people are saying that some areas of Mexico you have to wear a mask, and it's pretty strict. It's a lot of social pressure, whereas other areas are a little more free. I think it depends on the economy. I think in the poorer areas, I have one friend who's literally living hand to mouth. We were worried that she might be starving to death. It's more free for her, I think. Whereas I think the more liberal areas,
Enclaves,
urban, cosmopolitan.
Yeah. What about you? I mean, do you still have to go? Do you still have to wear a mask to go get bananas or something?
I generally, like I had a call yesterday for someone who's interested in or planning to come to Mexico from the States, and so this continues. This really bothers me. So yes, in like the big box stores, like the bigger establishments, so like businesses, places. But I generally don't go anywhere where a mask is required. I can't stand it. I cannot submit to this. I go right out and say it, to this Nazi bio-fascism. Because it literally is. It's eugenics. I've talked about this before. You can trace this back to the Nazi pharmaceutical cartel, the aristocratic, the eugenicists that have been planning this for, trying this for a century. Yeah, it's Nazi. So I don't care what people say. And I can't do it. I can't wear these cursed things.
Right.
And so it depends on the geography. So where the state where I am, Jalisco, our governor is a total freaking CIA agent, full-on globalist. He's financed by Rockefeller. His projects of Resilient City are financed by the Rockefeller Foundation.
No. Yeah.
He's full-on globalist, and he looks like the cartoon character people call him Kingpin. He's so disgusting.
Oh my God.
I want to vomit when I look at him, and other Mexicans tell me the same thing. Like, so grossed out by this guy because he's so evil and such a liar.
So
he imposed the vaccine. His name is Enrique Alfaro. I call him Enrique Adolfo Alfaro, like Adolfo Hitler. And so he put the vaccine certificates in January for like bars and casinos and conference centers, and they're really pushing the mask in Jalisco. But if you go to like the little shops that are around, I will first walk in without a mask. If they don't say anything, great. Which in the little shops, no one says anything, and usually they're not even wearing it. But then if you go to like a Walmart, I went to Walmart some weeks ago. I go like once a year. Just I buy like $1,000 of stuff, and so I don't have to go for the rest of the year. And I walked in without a mask, and I managed to do 80% of my shopping until one of the security guards found me in an aisle, and he asked me politely, like, can you put on the mask? And I just played dumb. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry, I forgot. Like it. And then I have these. I don't have with me my wallet.
The fake mask?
No, I have the mask, but I put the Telegram stickers that say, I put it on the mask and say, like, imagine like anyone still believes that all of this has to do with like a virus, like these things. Or it says, even the people in the 1940s, Germany didn't know that they were brainwashed by the government. Like, in Spanish, it says that. So I walk so they can, I'm in your face, like, I don't support, but I'm not going to argue with the mask in the shop. It's like people do that. That's not a battle. That's not a battle worth.
It's not a battle.
But like you, I avoid the places that ask for it. But we've been finding less and less of it here in Pittsburgh.
Right, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous. Yeah. I hear in other places that they're not applying it. But for example, like here in Jalisco, so in these places, like if you go to Puerto Vallarta and the beach hotel areas, they're fanatics with that. But like in other regions of Mexico, the more rural you are, it's not really being applied. But yeah, just it's crazy. Here in Mexico, they're obsessed with it for some reason. There's this famous Israeli anti-COVID person. I forget her name, but she's like, in the
her. I remember her.
She's like blonde, this Israeli woman. She was reporting about what's going on in Israel. So she just tweeted she went on a trip to Portugal and Mexico. And she's like, in Portugal, like nothing, no gel, no protocols. But in Mexico, they just love the gel and the temperature and the mask. And it's true. It's like she's pointing it out. I'm like, what is up with you freaking Mexicans? You guys are like total zombies with this stuff. It's like, stop
weird. How strange.
That's really strange.
I think it's the California influence, to be honest. I'm kidding, but maybe. I was just gonna say something. So I just last night discovered that a festival that I've been going to here in the States, in Chicago, actually, for the last, since 2005.
The Pitchfork Festival.
It's called the Pitchfork Music Festival. It's in Union Park.
It's indie rock, indie pop. Stuff. Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with the band The National.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so they're headlining the festival in July, this year's festival. And so last year they had a requirement for a vaccine passport, and then I think the year before that the requirement was a PCR test. Was some kind of PCR test,
if they had it at all,
or proof of a 48-hour negative PCR test in order to get into the festival. Well, this year there's nothing. There's no mask.
That's
no PCR.
I mean, that's like
that's huge.
Wow, like I love the sound of that.
Yeah. And so this basically, what I'm hoping is that whatever COVID funding that was funding these, venues and these festivals has dried up. So that we can sort of slowly get back to a place where we don't have to.
At least freedom of movement.
Yeah, and I can go see a show again. I haven't seen a show in 2 years.
Pittsburgh venues still require
the venues.
The venues do,
the concert venues.
Yeah, and
like if you want to go to the symphony or go to. But I think you can go to like museums.
No. Well, it depends.
There's some you have to wear a mask and some you don't.
I forgot to mention that the crazy governor here just a few days ago announced everything's going back to normal. Everything's dropped, not even protocols. So imagine the vaccine certificate has been annulled, and then except the mask remains. So it's like none of this makes any sense. So like everything's gone except for the mask and gel. But again, usually they just make you wear the mask, and that doesn't make any sense. And I'm thinking, like, this doesn't make any sense. So it's psychological, like brainwashing, and it's like a placeholder for me. I view it as a placeholder.
Yes,
maybe for like a digital ID, because they still need to keep it there, as a psychological thing until they get this digital ID. Because I think they're gonna come back. Again, everything that we've seen, I don't think people should relax. Like,
no.
They're gonna bring all of this back, like even bigger, and they're gonna force you to have these digital passports, and that's not good. That's crazy.
Well, we were speculating that it might be like personal technology, like like the equivalent of a Fitbit, but more so, and then it's like going to be on your face. Right?
Yeah. So this was back in the beginning when we were getting really sci-fi about stuff, and we're like, it's going to be some silicon embedded thing in your face, and that's why they want you to have, look kind of like the Borg. That's why they always want you to have a mask on your face to get you used to the idea of having something touching your skin.
But I think, going back to our listening in on Palevsky and Dr. Merritt, they were talking about, the distancing and the masking and, these various other things that have to do with like actually being connected to other people.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that you're unable, at a certain distance, you're unable to make that like electrical or energetic connection with other people, because you can feel somebody else in the room when they're nearby. That you don't have to see them, but you can feel their presence, right? And this distancing and takes away from that. The masking takes away your identity, so you stop seeing people as fellow humans. You start seeing them as something else, and it just takes down that affinity that we have in our humanity with each other, and and so I feel that has a lot to do with why the masks still remain, even though they're
why they're really, really going for the children. Like they're really, really making sure that the kids are indoctrinated into believing that the fellow humans are vectors of a dangerous pathogen. I saw somebody tweet recently that a child had recently said to her son, her little boy, who's like in first grade, I don't trust you because you don't wear a mask, and don't breathe on me. And the little boy, he's like 5 years old, 6 years old. He comes home crying to mama. And I'm just like, that's what we're doing to the kids. We're making that, it's like we're recreating, segregation or something. Like we're recreating a new hatred for the other, and then fill in the blank, whatever the other is.
But even just the ability for the government to force us to do this, to rewire everything,
Right.
if they get away with this, I mean, I don't think it stops here. Like they're experimenting. Like, okay, then what's the next thing they're going to force you? Like they force you to put up Ukraine flags, right? And the Babylon Bee was joking, like, oh, you can't go to the restaurant unless you prove that you support Ukraine and you're anti-Russia.
we saw that one.
Yeah, some Russian like sports athletes are not being allowed to compete unless they denounce Putin. It's like, this is insane. This is the social credit system. And I was telling like friends, like, yeah, first it was a health issue. Now it's like politics. From my Christian perspective, later it's going to be Christians. Like, imagine the force they have of the social media, everything, smartphone, TV, radio, social media across the board. This system is so powerful now. And they just put out there whatever narrative they want, and the majority comply. You see majority put up Ukraine flags, and they're brainwashed. They're like lemmings, like zombies. I mean, even someone I know in the U.S., as soon as Putin went into Ukraine, they called me out of the blue shouting about Putin. I'm like, who cares? I don't care. That's like, why are you calling me here in Mexico complaining about Russia and Putin? But they have been so programmed. So imagine the next thing, they can say hate this people group or this religious group, and everyone's going to be like, yeah, get him,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is it's interesting that the war is now being tied into the mental health issue that's been kind of floating around in the background.
Oh, right.
Make sure you check before all the COVID thing happened. There was this, make sure you check on your friends to make sure they're okay. And then what? Were you gonna say something?
Oh no, I was gonna tell him about the corporations are sending out emails.
That's where I was gonna go. Yeah, go for it.
But if you want to,
no, go ahead.
Okay, so companies are sending out emails to the staff saying the situation in Ukraine has caused a lot of turmoil, and we have workers that work out of Ukraine. We have set up special mental health times for you, and you can log into this Zoom call and meet with a counselor. Like, they've created this whole platform for mental health for people who are
being affected by
Ukraine,
right?
Like
a war that doesn't affect them
at all,
significantly at all. And yet at the same time it's like, oh, but
and they don't understand that the history with like with what happened in 2014. They don't understand
and then just to mention, like, I spoke recently on my podcast to Ed Calderon, who was a few times on Joe Rogan, and his interviews on Rogan went viral, been seen millions and millions of times, with Ed Calderon, former Mexican paramilitary police officer. And he was saying, like, in Mexico, at least in the first days of Ukraine, I don't know how it is now, maybe it's still the same, but the number of murders and deaths in Mexico was higher than in Ukraine. Exactly. So it's like, if I'm Mexican, they're killing me here. Why should I mean, of course it's bad what's happening in Ukraine, and people have to worry about it, but it's like, what about Yemen? I mean, I can't spend all day worrying about Yemen and Syria and Ukraine and Mexico. It's like, no, I'm in Mexico. I need to worry about surviving in Mexico.
Exactly.
I'm not living in Ukraine. I mean, I might die here in Mexico, so I have to first worry about that. And then your second point, I use SoundCloud for hosting my podcast, and I looked in the SoundCloud on the top bar. They actually put like a Ukraine thing. Like, it's like this woke thing where they're now all the corporations have to put whatever the current flavor of the day is. There was COVID before, now it's Ukraine, and then they
it was Black Lives Matter. The summer of 2020, it was Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
every website you went to had a pop-up that said, Black Lives Matter.
When we were recording our communitarianism video, or our Great Reset video too, I think we were talking about that.
That's when that was trending.
And I even came across a site that was like that. They just skipped the we support all races and whatever they were saying. These corporate websites that didn't care, it didn't give a shit about this stuff prior. All of a sudden they had the same message up.
Right.
There was one site, they leaped into the white supremacist language And I was like, where the hell did that come from?
Wow.
You know, it was like 0 to 100 in 2 seconds.
Right.
It was crazy.
So we noticed that with Ukraine as well.
Yeah. And so, like you said, it's flavor of the month.
Yeah. What's next? I wonder. God, it's crazy.
It's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then we're noticing, I saw my first COVID-19 pill ad. Have you seen any of those?
Yeah, they're talking about that. I'm like,
yeah,
I don't need any drugs. Like, I'm healthy. Like, why? I don't need to take anything. Like, what are they doing? I'm not taking it. Stay away from me with this stuff.
Exactly.
I was talking to Julie about this last night, and I said, they're taking away your agency as being, like we're talking the difference between. I said what they want to move to is prophylactic healthcare.
Right. Meaning.
You have to take something, or you have to put something on in order to protect yourself from whatever is out there.
Right.
And you said, but that's basically preventative healthcare. And I said, no, that's what they're trying to get away from. Right. They're trying to get away from the idea that you monitor your own health, that you take care of yourself through nutrition and getting the proper amount of sleep and exercise and all these things in order to keep yourself healthy.
Right.
This is something completely different. In fact, they've gotten away from it. The fact that you think that you're healthy, that you can take care of yourself, is off the table.
Right.
Completely.
This is the biosecurity state. And I think the fault is the stupid people. We get a critical mass that take this stuff. It's like, it's their fault. The critical mass.
It is.
It's like, if everyone just said, no, we don't need your garbage. No one's buying it. No one's taking it. It stops right there.
Right. Stop taking tests.
Right. I think that's the key right there.
Right. So this is the slippery slope, which we had Don Lester and David Parker on. They spent 10 years researching what really makes you ill, and then they wrote a book about it, and they've become really popular on social media. But this is a slippery slope. Like, I knew somebody in the early 1990s, perfectly healthy, cyclist, young-ish, ran his own law practice in San Francisco. He's gay. And so in the culture, they had been indoctrinated into just going and getting an HIV test, whether they felt sick or not.
It was just part of the thing.
It was just what you do. So he went and he had his, every 6-month HIV test, or his doctor just gave him the test. And his doctor said, oh no, you're HIV positive. We better put you on these medications so you don't get AIDS. And I watched him deteriorate over time. So he went and took a test.
Very quick period of time.
Over a year. He went from being a vibrant, healthy man to dead, like within a year. And I watched.
Well, I guess he died of AIDS.
And I watched him waste away.
A lot of people have made the parallels. It's the same thing we're doing now with.
So you're going and you're getting your PCR test, and it's coming up positive. So you're doing all these anti-life measures. You're quarantining. You're getting your COVID shots.
But yeah, people are saying that injection is basically giving you an autoimmune deficiency disease.
Exactly.
AIDS.
Yeah.
So it's the cure is actually what's killing you. So they fake you out with the sickness, and they give you a sickness that kills you. So.
Exactly. And they ran the trial balloon on this concept during the HIV/AIDS crisis, and it worked beautifully. And there was all sorts of acquisitions that were made as a result of this, especially real estate, especially in the Castro district in San Francisco, where people made tons of money off of, these homes and this valuable real estate. So, and not to mention the pharmaceutical industry, of course.
You just reminded me, in a week and a half, I'm going to have a guest on. He's from South Africa, specifically to talk about exactly this HIV. Stuff.
Great.
So he wanted to talk about it, and so
great.
I don't know too much about it, so it's I've seen there's a documentary, I think it's called House of Cards or something. Maybe you've seen it, like from 10 years ago. It talks about how the whole HIV/AIDS thing is a scam. But after watching it, it still wasn't clear to me. They didn't explain it that well. Like what is exactly where is the scam? It's kind of confusing, but
we're living it.
We're living it.
It's literally the COVID playbook. The HIV/AIDS playbook is reinvented through the SARS-CoV-2 COVID playbook now.
It's the same people. Fauci was involved in
same people.
And what
playbook.
Don Lester and David Parker
Don Lester and David Parker. Yeah.
What they were saying is that the idea was introduced through the lifestyle in gay culture in San Francisco, especially, where they were taking poppers or consuming drugs,
right?
That gave them specific types of
reactions or symptoms.
Symptoms is a good word.
So
they'd go in and see their doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, well, there's this thing going around. It's called HIV, and I think that you have it."
Right. So So, it's the same kind of thing where I feel that in March of 2020 or even before, when people were getting really sick and they were presenting with symptoms that were outside of your classic common cold or common flu, they they were falling down, they were having something similar to like air sickness, their lungs were collapsing, they were being poisoned. All right. And so that's where you got your intubation, which is what eventually killed them. They were being mistreated. So they were being poisoned. And when you poison a small portion of the population, you can convince the whole world that it's a virus. So this whole thing is a military exercise waged against us from the very beginning, just like HIV/AIDS was. And I hope that your guest from South Africa can even bring more information to the table. So
I hope so too.
Definitely looking forward to that one.
I never know how my guests will turn out. And it's interesting. Some guests are really good in the written format, like the stuff I see they do on Twitter or articles.
Oh, yeah.
And then sometimes they'll come on and it's like they were not as good as you.
Oh my God, we experienced something like that too. We won't name names, but
right,
a beautiful, prolific writer. Huge Twitter following, writes the most beautiful Twitter,
Okay, well, don't go into it too much.
Wonderful.
No.
And we get him on, and he's like, he won't talk.
But
so I'm like, come on, talk to us.
Yeah. And there's one guy that does some stuff really good, and I asked him to come on, but he says he doesn't like to do audio or video, like he hasn't done, and he just likes to do the written. So I've never done this before, so I'm again thinking outside the box.
Email
interview. Yeah, I said no. We could do like a text interview, and I publish it on my website. It's a different form of content, which I think people also enjoy, like a written, exclusive written interview, which is just fine. So
yeah,
and I've seen email interviews, and they're great.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love reading those kinds of interactions where it's all on the website, and then your name is bold and you ask the question, then his name is bold and he answers it. Well, it's like school.
I read a whole book like that. There's a book called Talking Anarchy or something like that. And it's with Colin Ward.
Right.
And I forget the author or the guy who put it together, but it was his interview with Colin Ward, who was a lovely person when he was alive.
Yeah.
And
he was an architect.
He was an architect and a teacher. And it's a wonderful interview that's in the book form. It's long, but it was all done through email.
Right.
It's crazy.
Speaking of that, I've got a book above me. 19th century book. I highly recommend it. It's called The Dialogue in Hell Between Machiavelli and Montesquieu.
Wow.
And it's just a dialogue between Machiavelli and Montesquieu. And Machiavelli, this is 19th century. It's an amazing book. You have to get it. Machiavelli explains to Montesquieu. People don't know Montesquieu is one of the ideological founders, to help promote the idea of the separation of powers in a democratic republic government. Okay. And Machiavelli says in the dialogue, "Give me a democratic republic, and I will show you point by point how I will overturn it and make it become a dictatorship or whatever." Wow. And it was so eye-opening. And it's the 19th century. Some people say that it was the source that was used for the book, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Okay.
Yeah.
That they used this book. But in any case, this book is originally in French and has been translated into English. You can find it on Amazon. But if you read stuff like this, then you can understand exactly today how our governments have been subverted. And he makes these are timeless tactics. He talks about subverting the media, politicians, the populace, everything. So
wow. That's incredible.
Well, Lee Merritt was talking about the art of war and how that figures into what's going on.
Right. A lot of people have been bringing up the art of war. Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
Yeah. Well, didn't Flores talk about that too? Like distributing the in your interview, Joaquin wasn't
he
he talking
didn't
about
mention the art of war, but he was mentioning stuff like
like distributing pieces of the government throughout.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I think a lot of people are on the same page and talking about a lot of the same concepts in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So we are at about the hour and a half mark.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Time
We
flies.
had a good conversation with you. Remind people where they can find you, and anything else you want to share.
The website is geopoliticsandempire.com. Brand new website. And that's the old one.
That's the old one?
I still publish the podcast there. That's Guadalajara Geopolitics. But if you just type in, or if you click on that important notice, there should be a link that takes you to
let me go there. Important notice is right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
I think there's a link, geopoliticsandempire.com in the.
Are we seeing it now? Yes, there it is. Okay.
Is this it?
The link, it says geopoliticsandempire.com.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that.
And there's a membership, $5 a month. If people want to consult, I get people wondering about expatriating to Mexico or somewhere else. Or if they want to start their own podcast. And
click here.
What else are the donations? Sponsors. I have one sponsor or affiliate. So if people want, that's about it. And I guess I'll be starting next week TNT Radio as well online. So
yeah.
That's where you can find
the
new
website.
Yeah, there you go.
This is the website.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, and there's Joaquin and there's Brandon. Okay. Excellent. All right. Yeah, all the ones that we've been watching.
Right.
All right.
I'm trying to run away from YouTube. I'm trying to make it so I don't really need YouTube anymore because I'm on my second strike and I can't upload there for a week. And even when they release me from the algorithm ghetto, I'm not gonna, because I'm on the second strike. So any one little wrong move, they just delete the channel. So I think I'm just gonna record a video like of 30 seconds. Say, hey guys, I just got a new video. Go over there, because you can't even say like one wrong word. Bam, you're gone.
You're gone. Yeah.
Do we have 2 strikes too?
We have one.
Oh, we have one.
You currently have one?
Yeah.
And it was for putting up somebody else's content.
We mirrored something. Yeah.
Yeah.
One or two.
We'll have to go look. We might have 2. We're kind of like, we don't care about YouTube.
Whatever.
But we understand. Are you on Rockfin too these days?
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, I just got on Rockfin. Then when was that? In January, and so the whole back catalog is on Rockfin, and every new episode comes on Rockfin. And I also put like the members only. Like I have a second show I do once a week called Dissident Thinker for members only. Sometimes I do interviews. Sometimes I just do a solo video discussing something, and that goes for members from the website, or it goes to people who are subscribed on Rockfin. It's premium,
right?
And I also added it to locals. So if you for $5 a month on locals, you also get access to Dissident Thinker. So
good,
that's great.
Wow,
that's good.
Yeah, you're really working it.
We noticed that you're in a lot of platforms like Odyssey and Rumble.
You have to be. Like, I don't see why anyone today would not be. There's people who choose like just Odyssey or just Rumble, but then I've noticed like I just hit 1,000 subscribers on Rumble. I'm on 1,500 on BitChute, and there's people who just pretty much their favorite is BitChute, right? Or their favorite is Rumble. So why wouldn't you put it out? I just did an interview with Johnny Vedmore, who works with Whitney Webb on the world, on basically the WEF being a CIA project.
Oh wow!
That hit 16,000 views on Rumble. So again, somebody shared the link to, and then the Bulgarian journalist that I interviewed about the biolabs on Brighteon, Mike Adams' Natural News, Brighteon platform. Usually my Brighteon videos get like 10 views or 100. Her interview on Brighteon got like 8,000. So again, somebody likes Brighteon and they shared the Brighteon link.
Right. Like, well, Brighteon, we stopped using it because we couldn't link to it from our Facebook page, and plus they only would allow so many videos up because we didn't have enough followers. And so
I was able to increase because I got enough views to increase my the limit or whatever
it is. So our Brighteon is kind of like stagnant. We haven't done anything with it. Yeah, but we've been putting it on BitChute and stuff. But BitChute, we had trouble getting stuff up there. Yeah, we're on Rumble.
Yeah.
We have a few things on BitChute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We don't
Rumble
BitChute
for sure.
was troublesome, but after you kind of like use Handbrake maybe to compress the video, I haven't been having problems. But some of these platforms like BitChute's got a number of like pro-Hitler, Nazi, anti-Semites.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're like government agents. I de facto believe some by default you have a percentage that are Fed bots, and they
Right.
put all these crazy comments, and I'm like, you guys are nuts. And so it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't been on BitChute in over a year. Like we don't even go to that page anymore. It just kind of sits there. We mostly do Rumble and Rockfin.
Yeah,
and YouTube.
I've been trying to get. I tried Odyssey about it over 2 years ago, and I couldn't get it to work. So I
abandoned it. I think now works fine now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll have to go back.
They've improved. Yeah. They got a lot of stuff coming out. They're adding now, like for creators, you can get tips now and pay like a membership for creators, like YouTube has. Odyssey is doing this, and so they're really getting. Going places.
That's good.
That's great.
They're helping.
Well, that's good to know. And I imagine some of our audience are going, "Oh God, now they're talking creative content people." But I think that we should definitely talk about this stuff so that people know where to go to see things that are not on YouTube, for sure.
And definitely, we'll touch base and follow up regarding the TNT radio.live.
Yeah, and we'll send you some people, maybe some ideas of like guests that you might consider too.
Because you have to meet a certain requirement, right? It's you've upped the ante a little bit with this. That's great. Congratulations on that. I think it's amazing. You deserve it.
I won't be sleeping.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. Well, we will.
I guess that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll talk to you soon. And thank you for being on Pullquote again. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I love your stuff. It's very artistic, poetic. I don't have the patience for this approach. I'm just like military style geopolitics. But when I watch your videos, it's like it's really needed. Like it relaxes me, and we can't forget like literature and the arts and poetry. And it's like that takes time and patience. And I'm like, I like watching your stuff too. So like we need this too.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. And we'll be making more stuff, some fresh work very soon. So,
all right, cool.
Thank you for that.
All right. Well, thank you for once again, thank you for being on Pullquote.
And we'll be right back with you.
All right. We'll see you again.
See ya.
All right. Wow. That was a good interview.
That was a great talk.
I always like talking to him. So
he's very sweet.
Yeah. So Julie.
What, JP?
Did you know that people can help support Book of Hours? How would they do that?
You can go to patreon.com/Book of Hours, and you can become a patron for an amount that you can afford. You can leave a tip in the tip jar on Rockfin. And you can even leave a super chat
on YouTube.
On YouTube.
Yeah, we still have YouTube for now.
Believe it or not.
Yeah, believe it or not.
And we will include a link for any other way that you may want to support us.
Yeah, that's in the show notes. So other than that, I guess that's pretty much it for this not episode, but this edition of Pullquote.
This edition of Pullquote. Thanks, guys. We'll see you again.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Pullquote is made possible by our patrons and supporters. You can help us continue to do the work that we do by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Book of Hours. Join Rockfin or leave us a tip at rockfin.com/Book of Hours. Or leave us a one-time donation at paypal.me/Book of Hours. Thank you.